Hello, George, Fat Ninja Food Forest. Just going through the whole wormery operation again. It's a sifting day today, where I change out one of my breeder bins with new compost. So here we can see I have a new compost. Hasn't been stirred yet. We're sitting at 144, 143, 144, somewhere in there. That'll get stirred 3 times. This is on the second stirring. We'll need a third turning. This one's gone static. It's not warm anymore. But it's already got worms in. It's right full of worms. I've stored worms out here for years in my bins. So because of that, make sure I can get something you can see good. It's already got a lot of worms in it. So we know that this finished compost here that I take to use as a bedding is just perfect for the worms because they're living in it already. Well, perfect's a big word, but great. Wonderful for them. So I take what I need out of here to feed what we have as a batch bin all week and to reset the beds. We'll stop here and go have a look in the beds themselves, in the system itself. Love seeing plastic in there. But you can see the life that's in here, even grubs, lots of worms. We'll see some centipedes, I'm sure. So this is the starting material. It's already got some worms in it. We'll use that as a bedding. And then in the wormery, I made this video earlier. I'm not sure if I'm going to remake the whole thing or just go ahead and show you real quick. It's also showing the, I think just how wonderful the compost that we make is. This Fat Ninja Food Forest Red Wheeler compost, worm castings. I blanked there for a minute. We're taking this abundance we see around us from the grapes, fruits, nuts, and berries in the food forest, the tomatoes, the lettuces, the annuals. Taking all that, we're composting it, running it through a full thermophilic compost. From there, we're running it through the worms in a breeder system where we put a good amount of worms in there that promotes breeding. And they sit in it for 3 weeks, turning it over with supplements in there. From there, it's going to go into this larger batch bin, and it sits in there for a few months, 2 to 3 months, while it finishes, going from one end to the other. We'll have a look at that now. Just want to point this way. I harvested them this morning. Best grape year ever for us. Really good fruit year. Now, I left the music playing. So this is a large batch bin. We feed it from one end to the other. When we get to that end, we start and go back the other way, able to harvest from that end to there. So once I get to this end, I'm going to come in and harvest from that end to here, harvest the castings, all the worms being promoted to come to this end. We feed on this face. Feeding on the face promotes the worms to go that way. Hope that makes sense. Let me set this camera down. So like I was saying, we feed this on the face. I'll take things like these squash, put them on the face. I dump the supplement feed on here. I'll take compost, that compost we bring in. I'm not only using that as a bedding for these breeder bins, but every 3 days in between feedings, I put it on the face of this because they consume the compost as well, making even a better compost. What that does is it brings all the worms along from one end to the other, brings the majority of them to the other end. I still have to sift this end to remove the castings and the larger debris out of there. I call that seconds. And there'll be some worms in it, but the majority harvest themselves by going back and forth with the feeding. That gets filled with, like I said, the compost as a topping to feed them. But the majority of the worms come from this. These are the breeder bins. We have 3 rows here. We're capable of doing 10 in each, up to 30. Right now, we just do 5 in each. So we have 15. Sold one yesterday, 2 days ago, bartered for it. So there's only 4 in this batch. But this is that compost from outside. Brought in and allowed to be in there 3 weeks. Being in there 3 weeks, we're going to see a tremendous amount of cocoons in here. I'll find a few to show you. I don't know if the light's going to be right for that. I'll bring you over here. So what I do now is I'm going to use light deprivation. I'm sorry. They're light phobic. I'm going to shine light on them, and they're going to dive. As they dive, I remove the castings. I made quite a few videos about this. It's very gentle on the worms. So I harvest the castings, take the worms out, take these castings, put them in this large batch bin on that face, feed on top of that. A day, 2 days later, I'll put compost on top of that, a different kind of food for them. So there's supplement, chicken feed and supplement, and then compost for 2 days. Do that process over again, and then add these worms the next week. So once a week I take these, dumping the cocoons in there. Well, I don't edit these videos. I hope this comes out clear. So once a week, I'm going to dump this whole row of bins in. And that's going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, normally 5, up to 5,000 cocoons or more. So by doing that, we're really increasing the worm population quick. We've taken these bins, given them a beautiful bedding that we already had some worms in from the thermophilic compost that became static compost, and worms moved in. And we put them in here in numbers. Something this size can hold up to 4,000 worms or so, 3,500 worms. Every square foot, you can hold 1,000 worms in the composting system. We go less than that for breeding. So in here is going to be 500 to 600 worms, a good number of worms, but just enough to make them drag across each other and promote brown chicka brown now. They're hermaphrodites. So when they touch, both can lay eggs. On here, we'll see just there's cocoons everywhere here. And this is just, we're looking at the surface here. This is after 3 weeks. We'll dig in a little bit. They're just all over the place. So just a ton of cocoons. Then we bring that over here, like I said. Dump it on the face of this. And they all hatch. So in here is just a real thousands and thousands of worms. Hundreds of thousands of worms. If I pull from the bottom up, we'll see. So back here, where we started from, this compost is really finished back here. You see lots of other insect life in here. There's some of those centipedes I was talking about. But the compost, there's going to be some worms in here. It's just gorgeous. We'll dig down a little farther where the worms aren't as many. It's plentiful. So I'll sift that. That'll be our finished product. That's over here in these bins. Some light. Give me this gorgeous sifted finished product. So that's the castings we sell. The worms we sell. If someone wants to buy worms by the pound, we want to sell our biggest and best, so we harvest from these. And we set you up with a composting system. It's one of these bins. This is a repeat for a lot of people, but that's the 500 to 600 really healthy worms that we've fed and supplemented. That's the castings themselves, which have all that biotic life in there, the microbiotic life. So the bacteria, the fungi, the protozoa, the nematodes. And they're going to inoculate your new bedding that you're starting in, the carbon source you're putting in there before you start feeding it, or as you start feeding it. And they're going to inoculate that with all that beneficial soil life. There's also going to be approximately 1,000 cocoons in here. Each of those cocoons is going to be approximately 4 worms on average. So that's another 4,000 worms they're going to take off in the next 3 months. That allowing the system to be very mature very quickly, taking care of at least a household of 4 or more food systems, food waste, food scraps. Hope all that's made sense. Showing the system we use. If you don't have as much organic matter outside, you can just use cardboard scraps. Mail waste is not shiny. So many things that we can feed these worms, and they put it through their system and just make it black gold for us. I'm George, Fat Ninja Food Forest. Classes consultations, tours, worms, worm composting systems, and worm compost. Change is better than a holiday. Peace.